laughing my head off, you know. It's incredible. I think we're gonna have to share it with the fans, so I look so well.
Alright, so in what sense are you?
I'm just gonna go through this and get loose, Kate, like I do every week, and just get ready for it and tell the people, you know, what we've been up to and, you know, how I met Obama and all of that stuff. I didn't actually meet him. I spoke to him on the phone, and, you know, he sent a car for me, but who wants to drive down to Washington with Ed Schultz? I mean, you know, What's the guy's name? Chris, what's his name? O'Donnell? Chris O'Donnell? The guy who's on the, you know, MNBC, you know,
Chris Matthews?
Chris Matthews, yeah.
Lawrence O'Donnell and Chris Matthews.
Chris Matthews and, you know, and Ed. They wanted me to go down to Washington with Ed.
We have a
What, are you
sniper.
going to go postal on us?
He's the Manchurian
I'm
candidate.
gonna come into your show, and I'm gonna go on like this. I'm gonna kill you and then shoot you.
Go ahead and do it. I'm friends with Andy. I'll be
He
buried out
survived
back.
other assassination attempts.
You know, I'll be buried out back by the septic
He
tank.
survived the coup, the great coup
Oh shit.
of '99.
Oh shit.
You know, the only thing with this thing is it really casts a terrible shadow.
Static?
Shadow.
Oh, yes, you're correct. Yes. Yeah.
What was she going on about tonight? Compulsive gambling and recovery. You know,
Yes.
I'm an expert on that. I used to gamble compulsively and try to recover my money every day.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Yeah. Where is he?
Points bulletin for the hat.
Yeah, the head.
That was close.
Will I be able to stand up at all, Katie, or?
Just stay in the light.
Okay.
Yeah, stay in the light. Now, when you stand up, what are you going to do? You're going to lift the microphone up with you?
I
You
guess.
could try, but be very delicate.
Now, you know what? Maybe we won't today.
We'll do that next week.
Next week. Because you have a handheld, right, that you used for
I
that?
have a wireless.
Let's do it next time.
Okay.
It'll look better in the show than if I sit here all the time. Don't you agree? I mean,
I don't know, Pep.
wait, unless we get a wheelchair and say a mysterious assailant.
Oh, I'm not sure, Pep.
From New City.
From New City.
Connection.
Oh,
The Democratic Party.
oh man.
I could have him shoot me.
That one's no
Have
good.
blood all over the place I could carry on like Teddy Roosevelt did.
That's right.
Did you know that, Richard?
What?
Teddy Roosevelt in real life was shot.
Does he?
Yeah, and, he had a Bible or something in his pocket. It absorbed most of the wound, but he was wounded, and Roosevelt continued to speak. He used his experience as a hunter to. Yeah, his experience as a hunter alerted him to the fact the wound wasn't fatal.
Get up and try to use this one too. We'll get you in there, okay?
There you go.
Okay, hello, good evening. I'm so glad to be here tonight. It's so wonderful to look out at all those empty seats and know that they could be filled with antagonists. That's the way it is. I just love working here in this studio where I was resurrected. It's quite something. What's up with you, kid? Go out there and find my hat, please. I've asked you to find the hat that designates that I, Preston Pepper, am the Laird of Dundeel. I'm sure the boys in the team are gonna like seeing me walking around, looking out there, feeling wonderful. This is what I always dreamed of, Bubs. We're back in the big time, and that's where we belong. We don't belong in the small time, we belong in the big time. I'm going to tell you all about the American political process, and I'm going to tell you how I was resurrected by the true love of Miss Bubbles McAdoo and my good friend and associate, Richard Quinn. You know, Richard told me an amazing story tonight. It's a story that is going to bring tears to your eyes. Before he got into this radio game, Rich used to work for a collection agency, and one day he was dispatched to the graveyard to basically enact one of the gravest tasks of his short career. Apparently somebody had been buried in a rented tuxedo, something I've always warned followers of this show to avoid. You miss a payment and they'll dig you up. Well, Rich was dispatched by the owner of the agency. He said, Rich, I want you to dig that stiff up. I want you to dig that stiff up, and I want you to bring that suit back. I'm not going to take no for an answer. And he did it. And when he got the suit back, he said, here, you take it. I'm not wearing it. And that was it. Next thing you know, he was in the radio game. A lot of people, you know, well, is that it? Are we going on? Look at this. It's just so exciting tonight, so exciting for me. You know, that story really gets me going. It really gets me going. I like standing up. It gets my circulation flowing when you get to my age. You need it. What's your name, young man? Bob. You know, Bob is an acronym.
Sit down. There we go.
Okay. Should I use this microphone? Rich?
Only use that when you're walking around. Use this one. Use it.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm sure you're all going crazy hearing me speak those words. We've had so much fun, and old Pep has a lot of interesting things to talk about tonight, as he always does. The name of the show, of course, is Pep Talk. Turn your radio dial all the way to the right. I got a lot of important things to talk about. What is this kid doing to me? He turns me off. I can't see myself. You know, stick him in front of the monitor. People have said, Pep, you're the best there is, but you've got this problem with the monitor. I said, when you're as good looking as I am, it's hard to keep your eyes off yourself. I am good looking. There's no doubt about it. People continually come up to me in the streets of Nyack and say, Pep, you're one hell of a good-looking guy. You must have been a real lady killer 30 years ago. I said, what? 30 years ago? 20 minutes ago I was killing somebody. I tell you, these women chase me around town like cats in the heat. Anyway, it was an interesting morning. As I told you last week on Pep Talk, we are preparing an extravaganza to coincide with the presidential elections. Everybody knows that I'm kind of on the outs right now with my own party. I am a little bit unhappy about the shabby treatment I got from the Republican General Committee. They would not let me get the nomination for vice president, something I thought that I clearly deserved based on my almost 40 years of loyal service to the grand old party, but it wasn't to be. They found this little whatever he is, and they felt that he was more contemporary, more pertinent to the message, whatever that is that they want to send out. It's all right, I don't care. I have become pretty philosophical in the last year. I just, as we all know, hugged my porcupine, and I felt a whole lot better. Bubbles, however, says I should do something about that. You know, that I should let the world know what's going on in the political circus that is pretending to be our government, and I'm going to do something about that. So, on November the 4th, right, honey?
Yes.
You know, it is so great the way the team has responded to me when they realized the great sadness that was inside of me after I had been rejected by the Republican convention for the vice presidential nomination. All the people rallied to Pep's cause and have pledged their undying loyalty in the run that I am now staging as an independent for the mayor's job in Upper Nyack. I tell you, I got a team of people who are the best there are. All of them reformed liberals. People who I put through the program of Liberals Anonymous, people who I've sponsored, all except Rory, of course, who is a lifelong small R Republican. I got Steve, I got Brent, I got all those people, I've got Blake, and I've even got as my foreign affairs advisor, Major Mike, the cricket editor from the Telegraph over in England. Well, anyway, on this show, I am going to basically just pull off the drapes and let the sun into the room like Pip did in Great Expectations, and you are going to see all the rottenness, all of the squalor inside the American political system. It's incredible that for so long I believed this stuff. I was the conservatives' conservative, but I've turned that around. Now I am more like a moderate conservative, although I might become a conservative moderate. That's the kind of guy old Pep has become since I have fallen in love with the woman who most probably is going to become my ninth wife. And I refer, of course, to the lovely Bubbles McAdoo. Bubs?
Yes.
Bubs, I love you. I always have loved you since that chance meeting 40 years ago in Paris.
Oh, Preston.
The capital city of love.
You're such a poet.
Oh, well, people say that, Bubs, and they would be correct in that assumption. You know, what I want to do now is, Bubs, do you think we can get a look at the theater? I want to walk up there and show the people, the good people out there in Pepland, what's going to be going on. Here I am, I'm going to be on this stage. This is the very place where my resurrection took place. It seems like an eternity, but only 6 months ago, old Pep stepped up to the microphone behind me and said, I said, welcome to my resurrection. Many people felt it was impossible. I had fallen so far. We all know the story. On that very night, I made it known to a shocked public that Ann Coulter, the so-called queen of the right, was no more than a Mata Hari who had led me on and cast me out into the bottomless pit of alcoholism. You see, she's not who she says she is. She is not a real conservative. Ann Coulter is a double agent working for the liberals to bring America, the Republican Party, and God to its knees. It doesn't get much worse than that. It does not get much worse than that. But I'm a fighter, and I found a woman whose love brought me back, Bubbles McAdoo. You know, I really should say some great things about Bubbles tonight, and I will. Bubbles McAdoo has led a sheltered life. Her father, Ebenezer, who is also the wealthiest man in the world, made sure she had the best things in life. He didn't spoil her, but he made sure she didn't want for anything. She had a wild, young adulthood when she was considered in these parts to be the Doris Duke of Dutchess County, but now she's completely serious about her life, my life, our life together, and the service that we intend to do for this great country, the United States of America. Without Bubbles' support, I don't know what would have happened. I was living out in Huntington, Long Island, in a little rat hole, as we like to jest, above Mrs. Blair's garage. I was doing my show flat on my back with a bottle of whiskey under my bed. I was more often drunk than sober, and I liked it that way. I had fallen so far. And yet one night there was a knock on the door. And who was it? It was nobody else than Bubble McAdoo's longtime chauffeur and retainer, Othello. Othello had been a welterweight boxing champion in his younger days, but the wild life that he led had left him destitute and sleeping on Skid Row. Bubbles, always a big fight fan, heard about this, and she brought him back to Eagle's Claw, the family estate up on the Hudson, cleaned him up, sobered him up, and gave him a job. Now he's as loyal as a dog in the pound. He said, I want to take you to Eagle's Claw. I didn't like the idea one bit. I didn't like it one bit. In fact, I took a swing at him. I'm a pretty fair boxer, I must admit, but I wasn't quick enough for the ex-welterweight boxing champion in the world. I woke up in a shower stall in Eagle's Claw, rubbing my jaw. Othello helped to sober me up. There were 6 days of exercise and hot sauna baths, a process you can only describe with one word: torture. At the end of 6 days, sobered up but shaky, and well-dressed, I was brought into the great woman's presence. And as we all remember, if we've been watching Pep Talk, and I hope you've been watching Pep Talk, because if you haven't been watching Pep Talk, you don't know what's going on in America. And it's bad, boys and girls. While I speak, 40,000 people will lose their homes to foreclosure. It's that bad. They don't want to tell you the truth. You might go home, young man, and find you have no home. That's how bad it's getting. But old Pep has a remedy for that. I've been working on this with Rory. Rory's the team economist, and he's got a great idea. I'm not going to disclose this right now. By the way, I mentioned I'm running as an independent, and I think that's the way old Pep has to go. I've always been an independent ever since that night when Madame Hepzibah, the soothsayer that Bubbles had contracted to help her with her stock market portfolio, took one look at me and said, "My God, he's the reincarnation of Teddy Roosevelt." I didn't know how to react to that in the beginning. Who would know how to react to that in the beginning? But it soon became apparent that old Pep was meant for bigger and better things. I began to think that the only way we were going to get a Republican elected to the president's office was if we made a few changes that had to be made so things could stay the same. But I wasn't getting through to the guys. Karl Rove could not understand what I wanted to do. And in fact, on one occasion, I said, "Carl, there's a movie that you probably should see. It's called The Leopard." And he looked at me and said, "Is that a jungle picture?" And I said, "No, it's not a jungle picture, Carl. It's a movie with Burt Lancaster starring as an Italian aristocrat who decides that he must change and join Republican forces so that all things may stay as they were." He looked at me, he said, "People make movies about themes like that?" And I said to Carl, "You know, Carl, they do. And if you would stop watching that one movie you're so fond of, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you might begin to appreciate that there are other possibilities." But he didn't want to. He loves that movie too well, and that was where I struck out with Carl. I tried my way with Clarence Thomas, and Clarence Thomas is one of the dearest people I've ever met, but he, too, was caught up in the orthodoxy of the Republican Party and its politics. And so I cast about for some way to change their minds, and I kept striking out. And then one day I got a phone call from my operative Brent, the great kid who we're grooming for big things when we take over Upper Nyack and get to show the people of America how you run things right. I had told you that I had been approached by my old buddy, the libertarian filmmaker John Milius, to star in a movie called Right Wing's Rocket, a little tale, a little morality tale about a world gone mad. They re-elect Obama, and then they start arresting all the freethinkers. I'm the last voice of truth, but the thought police are on my trail, and we've been through it a couple of times. Well, anyway, I was supposed to star in this movie, and I was thinking about a lot of things then. You know, I was thinking maybe I'm going to give politics up. In the meantime, I got together with Carl for one last joint operation. We were able to pay off the judges in the Mother of the Year contest. By doing so, we were able to get my beloved Bubbles elected Mother of the Year, something that her father didn't believe possible, and he asked me as if how much money it had cost. And when I told him he couldn't believe it, he said I had gotten her that title cheap. However, Bubbles, in her gratitude, she had been thinking of buying me an NFL franchise, decided that what I really needed to legitimize my cause as a political independent was something she had discussed out at the Trophy Wives Ball with Major Mike, the cricket writer for the Telegraph and a great, great British conservative thinker and writer, and they decided they were going to buy me a title. And they did. For a month and a half later, we flew to Scotland, where they put this hat on my head and declared me, Preston Pepper, a child of humble origins. My father was a poor farmer. Yes, he was a wealthy businessman, but he was a poor farmer. They put this hat on my head and they made me the Laird of Dundee. It was quite a party they had there, and I had all kinds of new friends like Sean Connery, and I thought personally that this was going to, look good on the resume, and it would be kind of an absentee title. It wasn't to be, however, because no sooner did Bubbles and I take a look at the books when we found out that Scotland the Brave was Scotland the Broke. I'm going to sit down right now and get comfortable, and I'm going to take a look at my notes. This is really something. I don't ordinarily stand up to my full 6'3", 200 pounds a man. I know it's too dangerous to put that on display with women out there watching the show. But tonight I thought I would try out something different. Let's take a look right now. Put the old microphone down. Wow, my God, what do you do with that thing? I'll tell you. Not much of a... Well, anyway, I had discussed a few things right now, and I'm looking at all these things. One of the great things we used to do on the show was read the correspondence and that used to come in. We used to get a lot of letters, but the recent problems that the Postal Service has been having and the fear of having one of those guys come in the studio has really changed our mind about that. But on the show, I have decided to basically bring some of the best letters we received this year, and we may even get a phone link in with some of the people who were so affected by the show. We might talk a little bit with people like Miss Lisa and Miss Denise, two people who were suffering terribly under the yoke of liberalism. One of the mistakes a lot of people have when they look at the town I live in, they like to believe, as I've often said, that this is a town where a Republican strategist is treated like a rock star. And it used to be the case. But the liberals work day and night just like the devil. And they've basically encroached into this town, and it's not what it used to be. I'm going to tell you that. Richard and I know a couple of months ago, in fact, this very building, which once housed Woolworths, you can't be any more capitalistic than Woolworths, was bought by a couple of liberal Greeks, the kleptomaniakis brothers, and since then we have been in a ceaseless fight to keep Rockland World Radio on the air, broadcasting our message of truth and hope to all of the millions of people out there. And it's not just in the United States. We get letters from people in places like Helsinki and Copenhagen and Perth, Australia and Alberta, Canada. There is a tremendous groundswell of support for this show. People keep saying PEP. If you ever get tired of the United States, and we know what a great country it is, you'd be welcome where we live. We need somebody like you to cut through the crap that the liberals have been spouting for years as they suck us dry. I told you I was speaking to Obama on the phone, and man, was he trying to butter me up. Alex, what are you doing? What are you doing over there? Come here, son. I want to bring you on the air. This is one of the boys who we recruited. He was basically He's the victim of a liberal home. And I just couldn't tolerate that. I myself am the victim of a liberal household. Go run along, son. He's a great kid. You know, these liberals, what they do to their families, we don't even want to talk about. But I've got him in a program for young people, you know, who are the victims of liberalism. And it's really working. And we've got him here at Rockland World Radio. He's reading Ayn Rand. And he's doing all the things he's got to do to eventually lead a meaningful life, you know, and I just hope it sticks. You know, I've worked so hard on this program that we have created, Liberals Anonymous and Lebanon, you know, and there have been slips when my tax accountant basically lapsed back into liberalism around tax time. It's enough to break anybody, you know. He's got a book coming out, by the way, about the terrible experience called Bagels and Mylocks. It really tells the whole story of the tremendous stress and pressure that a CPA goes through around tax time. But we got Ira back when we brought him out to Eagle's Claw, and old Doc Rubin came up with a folk cure that seems to have had the desired effect. And there are a lot of other countries, too, that are suffering from liberalism. When I got my title, as I tend to drift when I'm telling these tales. Don't expect Pep to go from A to B to C to D like all of these run-of-the-mill raconteurs. I just tell it like it is, and if I go one way and come back the other, so be it. I go where the spirit takes me, the spirit of Teddy Roosevelt and Charles Sumner and Abraham Lincoln and all the great Republicans of the past. You know, I get a lot of solace out of that, the fact that I am representative of an age when Republicans stood for something more than shaking down the American people. Not to say that the Democrats aren't worse, because they are. The Democrats are a bunch of cagey guys. I'm on the phone with Obama today, and he's buttering me up about the man who mentored me, Bingo Johnson, the great spitball pitcher from the Negro Leagues. And Obama says, Pep, I want to hear those stories. Yeah, I bet he wanted to hear those stories. He's just happy that I was so mad at Romney when I found out he wanted to remove caffeine from American society, that I hatched up a plan with the boys at Coca-Cola that's effectively thrown more than one monkey wrench into Mitt's machinery. It's going to destroy him, you know. Coke sales are going up and up and up, and Mitt's chances of winning that office he so coveted are going down and down and down. But what I wanted to say is, when I put this hat on my head and when the cheering stopped, I realized that Scotland the Brave had become Scotland the Broke. And thank God Bubbles McAdoo was there in a little tam o' shan, tweed jacket, tears in her eyes as she watched her beloved Scotland, she's of Scottish ancestry, sinking deeper and deeper into debt, so she pulled out the magic checkbook that she carries wherever she goes, and with a slash of her pen, Scotland was solvent again, and a lot of people would like to see Bubbles McAdoo installed as Queen of Scotland. But I started looking at the books, and I realized that if I were going to be laird, I wouldn't have much left unless I did something, and I found an old distillery that was derelict on the property, and we got that running, and we've got a great product out now. I'm sure you're asking for it at all the choice saloons across America. Give me a Glen Beck 12-year-old style scotch. It's Save the People of Scotland, and that's when I realized, Pep, you thought you were going to be out of the culture wars. Well, boy, oh boy, your battle has just begun. You see, most of the people in both of the parties, you know, I could see that immediately talking to you-know-who on the telephone, are just a bunch of shysters. Democrats are worse, but the Republican Party has been taken over by blue dog Democrats who have wrapped themselves in the colors of the Grand Old Party. They're not, as Rory is so fond of saying every time we chat, small R Republicans, and it really shows. They don't care about anything except their bank accounts. I don't live that way. I don't have to live that way. And Bubbles has assured me that it would be wrong for me to be obsessed with money when the people of America, the people of the free world, need a champion to stand up against the forces that are trying to take over the world and turn it into some kind of totalitarian nightmare. Won't happen while the Laird's around, boys and girls. Meanwhile, the baseball season is winding down, and it's kind of sad. My Mets didn't do so well for another year. But again, that book that I furtively pulled out of Jane Fonda's pocketbook has taught me well, and every time I face adversity, I do it with a smile now, because I just hug my porcupine. I hug my porcupine, and I feel good doing it. And I'm going to tell you something. Have you hugged your porcupine? Because if you do, if you give all the love in your heart to that little spiny guy who needs it just as much as any cute little kitten or cuddly puppy, the big guy is going to reward you big time. Big time. You've already been pretty well rewarded if you're listening to this broadcast. You're living in God's country. You're living in America. As we all know from watching Pep Talk, on the 8th day, God made America. But we have to fight to keep it pure. We have to be diligent around the clock. That's why I've got Alex down in the back alley right now, making sure that liberals don't take us by surprise. It's happened before, and the last time it did, it was like one of those Horatio Nelson movies. We were fighting off borders, and Rich and I were throwing them down the stairs. But they didn't get here. They didn't stop the broadcast. They've tried just about everything. We finally had to flush him down the stairs with the fire hose, and we'd like to thank the angry human for his participation in that. Sometimes he comes in handy. He's not a bad fellow. Anyway, I'd like to leave you with something else. You know, we have another great show coming up. You know, people were raving about Mike Hamlet, Shakespearean detective. Well, now we've got a story. It's a baseball story. It's a baseball story about the first black man to play baseball on a desert island, and it's called Jackie Robinson Crusoe, and I think it's a great tale. Everybody is going to have a great time with it. It's going to be coming out for the kids around Christmas time, and Bingo's son is going to be playing in it. I think you are really, really in for a great time. You know, I told to Richard, I got so much on my plate between being a laird and running for mayor of Upper Nyack, but I still have time for the kids of America. Because if there are no kids, there is no future, and that's why old Pep devotes all his spare time to these kids. He doesn't want to see them dragged down by the siren song of liberalism. I swore that I would do everything in my power, and Bubbles backs me up on this, to make sure that the kids of America have their future secured. I don't know what else I'm going to say, but what I'd like you all to remember is that in a month we are going to have the hottest, most informative show in the history of broadcasting. Richard was a little bit shaken when I made that boast that that's what we were going to do. But when he saw the script I had, my God, he said, we are going to put CBS, NBC, and ABC out of business overnight. He said, Pep, I love it. So what I want you all to do is to go to bed right now and dream sweet dreams of freedom and pep talk. Can't get much better than that. And it's been wonderful here tonight. I love every one of you. Good night. God bless you, and I'll be back soon. Get me out of here. What?
It's funny, I like it.
Well, boy,
really enthusiastic, these kids.